that the man should be alone.
He was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. I forget how long he was, but he was huge. He was a huge baby. Red hair. Red hair. He had big, fat, chubby legs. He was just wiggling around and wiggling and wiggling. He was on his tummy and looking at my dad and wiggling and wiggling. And my dad said, well, you'd rather have him that way than not be moving at all. And that's the way he always was, always moving.
We were planning a really big tour with our music ministry. And a few months later, I found out that I was pregnant. It was a bit of a shock, but we decided that we would continue and go on the tour anyway. I stayed with Warner's brother in LA and his wife, and they were taking care of me for about 4 weeks until I had the baby, but the ministry had to continue touring, and Warner was the director, so he had to go with them. So I was by myself, really. Dr. Yumali was in the first floor sleeping. I was in the waiting room. And then he came. A few minutes later, he came. I remember that I pushed 3 times and Shami was born. And I saw this little black little head. So I had Shami in the waiting room.
He loved to wrestle. Cameron loved to wrestle. His dad would wrestle with the kids a lot, and he loved that. Loved Legos. He loved to be in plays. He did karate. There was one time in the front room of his grandparents' living room that he acted out a whole scene, all the different characters of a scene from Lord of the Rings, and it was enthralling. Always very helpful in church. He was outside doing traffic during events. He was in programs. He was on the dance team. He was on the karate team. Played baseball. Played flag football. Yeah, very active.
We would put her in a little bassinet behind the curtain, and she would just sleep through the concert like nothing. She traveled well. She was never fussy about anything, always really pleasant, well-behaved. She used to sit in the front when she was older, playing with all her little toys. I would sit her there. And then as she started getting older, she would do her homework in the front, just sitting there.
Jesus is my best friend.
Shami started singing on stage one little song when she was 4 years old. Her interest in music was she knew all the songs, all the arrangements. I could see her, if somebody did a bad note, she would kind of she'd lift her little head up and kind of go, oh, that wasn't good. So we knew that she had a real fine ear and a really good interest in music.
Hey, Shore, what's up? Cameron Wells here.
Cameron is a very social person. And I think one of the reasons why he was so involved in all of those things is because he is social. And he was also a leader. It was also very evident that in his group of friends that he was one of the driving forces.
Anytime anybody was hanging out with Cameron, he was always the one taking charge and saying, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make this happen. So he was kind of the ringleader of that group.
Because I was in EP, and I would say either on stage or to people that my family, they started Endless Praise, people would always come up to me and say, were you the little girl that used to sing with the group? And I was like, no, that's my cousin Shami. She's not a little girl anymore. And they're like, oh my goodness.
I also grew up on the road with a ministry, and I think Shami and I have that really, that connection in just kind of the not consistency of life.
I still call Australia home.
got an email asking from the college ministry asking if I could join one of their nights.
And really the purpose of the series was to get, the college students to really engage in worship, to understand worship, what is worship.
So they chose the worship leader that had an accent.
So we brought in the Australian, and
that's kind of how I got to meet Cameron. It was actually going to be a girl that was going to be interviewing me, but they switched it up kind of last minute.
The next night, I interviewed her on stage, and
that was the first time that I knew that he existed.
I remember hearing about it from a lot of people about their chemistry on stage when he had interviewed her.
I heard about meeting her on stage, and I heard about some of the sparks flying. I heard about the conversation in the parking lot.
They talked for about 45 minutes. So he rang us to Australia while we were in my father's house, and we talked through the computer.
I said, look, I love your daughter, and I know that I'm the worst, but I would love to marry her. And
I love her to death, and I want to have some kids and jump into the next season of life with her.
When I found out Cameron was getting engaged, I was thrilled. I'd had the opportunity to meet Charmaine a couple times. She complimented him so well.
I was really excited that she was the person that he chose to partner in life with.
It came about that Cameron messaged both Priscilla and I, telling us that he was going to propose to Charmaine on this specific date.
I started messaging Sade privately and I was like, Dottie, can we do this? Like, come on, wouldn't it be awesome if we could do it? And Cameron doesn't know who he was talking to because we had to move heaven and earth to get to America.
I knew that I just had to be there to share this time with Shami. So we made it happen. It was like one day of like, okay, are we doing it? Are we doing it? And then it was booked by that night.
I knew that she already didn't have any idea, but I wanted to catch her completely off guard.
The whole engagement caught me by complete surprise.
Then Sharon came on board as well, and Sharon was like, I'm coming. And
she's like, guess what, Mummy? And I was like, what? And she goes, I'm coming to America with you.
That would be the best.
Every day when I got home from work, I would go and I'd make sure it was still there. Like, my precious.
It was incredibly stressful because it was such a huge secret to keep.
And we finally got there. And then Colton, he had a whole plan as to how everything was going to go down.
So like structured, which I loved, of what was happening. But I also felt like vomiting because I was like so nervous for the whole situation that was happening.
There was a guy in a wetsuit in the water filming.
And he goes, let's go walk out on the pier. Let's go just take in the view. So I was like, yeah, let's do that.
This Cameron went to the bathroom to put on his microphone, and Charmaine started singing, and that was pretty funny.
Unbeknownst to her, my family was there, her family was there, and then actually Priscilla, Sade, Sharon, and Neve.
So we went out and we start walking towards the pier.
So we just felt like, this is the best. Like, this is the most organized and most documented proposal ever.
Felt like vomiting the whole time.
It was like the very real deal.
I'm gonna scream. I can't hold it in anymore. I've been holding this for 2 weeks.
Neve ran out when it was time. After Najee and Wena went, Neve ran out with the rose, and we watched her run down, and we heard Shami go, is that Neve?
And he got down on one knee, and we're all hiding.
I mumbled like a moron.
I was like, yeah, honey, I love you too. Yeah.
I was like, let's all scream together. In the camera, I'm the only one that's screaming.
So I forgot to scream.
So I actually had to propose to her twice. I said, will you marry me? And she said, now? And I said, yes. Will you marry me? And then she said yes. And
in that moment, it's like I got thrown into another world.
feel like when we're at our best, we're not fiance and fiance, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend, we're just friends.